what if the drivers are just that bad? Like, I don't know if we're looking at that aspect enough. And there's a couple instances I want to look at. One for the Truck Series, one for the Xfinity Series that sticks out to me. And we can kind of look through the field and see it, or look through the 3 series and see it repeating. But let's take a look at the Sam Hunt car really quick. And so this previous race, and there's instances where I'm right, there's instances where I'm wrong, but this is just sticking out to me because, hey, like, I want to look at this and really pay attention. So when we look at the Sam Hunt number 26 car in the Xfinity Series entering Richmond, I wrote on my Patreon PDF is that I wanted to be overweight on 2 people in the field, and that was Sam Mayer and that was John Hunter Nemechek. And Nemechek ended up being really, really fast throughout the entire day. He drove up through the field, stayed inside the top 10 all day, nearly won the race. I haven't looked back at it. I haven't rewatched the race. I watched it, on the side because I was doing my live show with Jordan. I actually just finished watching the Darlington Cup race, and so I'm barely on that. So races that I haven't seen, I'm trying to catch up before we get to another intermediate track. But looking at least the first half of the Richmond race, John Nemechek was fast. When we look at our lap times, like he's up there, like he's a fast car, and the reason I wanted to play John Nemechek so much was because of the run he had at Dover. And when we look back in the Dover race, I want to show you some stuff that pops out. And so if you want, you can look into this on your own. You can find it at racefortheprize.com. Just easy to read, easy to make into a video here, and that's why I love it, because it's easy for me to use. But I love looking at this type of stuff. And so when we look at Dover for John Hunter Nemechek in that 26 car, where are we at, Dover? So this is something that sticks out to me, because up until this, we had Brandon run it, we had Chris run it, we had Santino, Colin Garrett, and Brandon again. And the best finish they were able to get through there, outside of Brandon's finish at Daytona, was 15th, or actually 13th with Santino at Las Vegas, 15th at Atlanta, 15th at Phoenix, 15th at Talladega. But nothing really stood out that's showing that this was a really, really fast car up until this moment, up until Dover. So when we get to Dover and we look at John Hunter Nemechek, it's almost a spitting image to what happened at Richmond. He started 30th, drove 25th on lap 1, 22nd lap 2, all the way up to 21st lap 3 at the Dover race. Well, Brandon, that's not that impressive. The Xfinity Series is quite bad. It is, but when we look at how fast he was able to cut through that field, despite the fact that the Xfinity Series is kind of a joke and not a lot of people are very talented and not a lot of people are running fast, between lap 1 and 21, he drove up from 30th to 16th. At the competition caution, he restarts 15th, drives up to 12th in 5 laps. We have a yellow, he starts 12th again, and he drives all the way up to 10th in another 10-lap restart. So we're at lap 46, and John Hunter Nemechek has gone from 30th to 10th. And really, when he caught up to the people who are fast, the top 10 cars, the top 15 cars, he was cutting through those guys like butter. We get another yellow. They come out of the yellow lap 55. He starts 13th. He drives up to 10th. We have another yellow on lap 59. John Hunter Nemechek then restarts 10th. And we have another yellow. He crosses the line 11th on lap 68. And then when we get in our first real run on lap 75 at Dover, John Hunter Nemechek goes from 10th to 8th. I'm pretty sure John Hunter Nemechek was getting fast laps. I don't have that on here at the moment, so I can't confirm that. But in my memory, because I played John Hunter Nemechek this week thinking that he would be faster in the Sam Hunt car than normal, I remember seeing fast laps. And at least seeing that he can cut through the field like this is showing that. He gets caught running 9th for about a 30-lap run between lap 100 and lap 137. So he kind of stalls out there. And on lap 139, he has a mechanical issue, and we have him going to the garage. He finishes 33rd, goes a lap down. Now, you only see that if you're, and this is why I do watch lineups throughout the race, not only to see how my own lineups are doing, but to see how other drivers are doing, to see in real time if I can see people who are getting fast laps that shouldn't, if I can confirm, on a line, hey, did I play this guy? Did he end up running fast laps? And so I'm pretty sure John Hunter Nemechek ran fast laps at Dover. Can't confirm that right now. But just in my mind, I remember him doing that. The reason that's important is because nobody had ran that car that fast. We didn't see Santino Ferrucci do that. We didn't see Colin Garrett do that. We didn't see Brandon do that. We didn't see Chris Wright do that. Despite the fact that Wright finished 18th at kind of a wreck fest at Daytona at the road course. Brandon finished 8th at a wreck fest at Daytona early in the year. We didn't see like the speed out of this car. And it was a shame that he ended up having a mechanical issue with about, a quarter of the race remaining, because I think John Hunter Nemechek would have finished inside the top 8 had we not had that issue. And I think looking back at him getting stuck running 9th, and I look back at the broadcast, they're not even showing, so I can't confirm if he's having an issue or not. But I think the reason John Hunter got stuck running 9th is because he started having a mechanical issue and he was trying to compensate, and he was still fast. He was 9th, but he ended up getting stuck there. Anyway, moving on to Richmond, or moving on when we're looking at the rest of the drivers who ran that 26 car. We had Chris Wright hop into it at Austin, got in a wreck. Grant Enfinger ran at Charlotte, and let's go ahead and look at how Grant Enfinger did in this car, because if I remember, he got wrecked early, and we'll get to my main point at some point here, but I'm kind of reliving this as we go along. So he starts last. Did he get? Let me look at Charlotte real quick. I'm pretty sure he either didn't qualify or something happened here. So what happened to failed to qualify, withdrew, driver changes? What happened here? DC. I cannot remember what DC stands for on Racing Reference. Stands for driver change. I'm an idiot. And so Brandon Godovic was going to run Charlotte. They had to do a driver change at the last minute. Grant Enfinger has to jump in the car. He starts dead last. This is going to be him first time running an Xfinity car in forever. And he ends up getting involved in a wreck on lap 22 when he's running in the back of the field. And when you look back at the crash, you see Enfinger there 3 wide coming across the start-finish line, and he squeezes Chad Fincham. He basically doesn't clear himself as they're coming across the start-finish line, and Grant Enfinger gets put into the wall, finishes dead last at Charlotte. Only ran 26 laps, and so this was a race where I wanted to see what Enfinger could do, because Enfinger is a real race car driver. Unfortunately, he got wrecked. And so when we look at the other runs that they've had in this car, you had Chris hop in it, Will Rogers hop in it, Santino Ferrucci hop into it, and you would see them get good runs. Like you saw Brandon Godovic get a 16th at Loudon. You saw Colin Garrett run decent at Darlington earlier in the year. Santino Ferrucci finishing 14th at Pocono. And so we've seen that this car be a fringe, top 15, inside top 20 car with, I'm going to call these guys no-name drivers because they're not the cream of the crop. I like Colin Garrett as a DFS play, but the amount of experience he has versus John Hunter Nemechek and versus other people aren't equivalent. And so when we went back to Richmond, and John Hunter Nemechek being what I thought was underpriced, starting 21st or 27th, and seeing how somebody who was actually able to drive this car with confidence and actual experience of know how to drive a stock car, that's the reason I wanted to be overweight on John Hunter Nemechek. I had a feeling that this car could perform better if we had an actual decent race car driver in it. And we saw how it basically ended. You saw John Hunter Nemechek drive through the field, and you saw him finish third. And granted, he didn't drive through the field as quickly as I thought he would be. But, I mean, when you look at it, John Hunter Nemechek goes from 27th on the initial restart to 15th on lap 20. Very similar to the Dover race. John Hunter Nemechek is inside the top 10 on lap 42. So it took John Hunter Nemechek 40 laps to crack the top 10. He goes all the way to 7th on lap 55, which is just impressive. Like, this was a fast car. Everybody starts pitting. Actually, we have a yellow at yeah, that's it. We haven't updated the yellows on here. Come on, Piercy boy, you gotta find out where the yellows were. But anyway, John Hunter Nemechek drives up to 7th in this car that I think can be a top 10 car. And I think I said something along the lines of, I think this is a Joe Gibbs racing car. I know it's not actually a Joe Gibbs racing, but that's the best equivalent I can think of in terms of defining what this 26 car is. I think it's a car that is a top 7 car. It's just the drivers that are holding it back of making it not be a top 7 car. Now, I could be wrong. I could be overreacting. John Hunter Nemechek having this run here, and if we have another driver that I think is equivalent to John Nemechek, I'll certainly play the number 26 again. But just because we saw John Nemechek run through the field doesn't mean I'm going to bump up Colin Garrett. Doesn't mean I'm going to bump up Brendan Godovic. Like, these guys are 17th to 22nd place drivers, maybe even top 15 on a ceiling day. But I want to bring that up to you is because, is it the drivers? Like, are the drivers really this bad? The other example I want to talk about is the 9 truck this year of the Cody Rohball entry. And so when we look at Cody Rohball's previous finishes, or Cody Rohball, his previous finishes, even the last couple of years, like, he hasn't been, a top 10 contender. He hasn't been a guy that has been killing the field. And when you look at his finishes this year, obviously he finishes 8th at Daytona, Wreckfest. 16th at Daytona Road, Wreckfest. Can't really consider that as well. Grant Enfinger hops in this car because obviously he missed a ride. It drives up to 7th in this car, and I remember our main discussion amongst the industry was, how well is Enfinger going to perform in this car? Is he going to do what he does in ThorSport, or is he going to take a 15th place car and drive up to 7th in it? And so I got to bring up the Truck Series stuff really quick. But when we look at who's driving these cars with actual experience, like, did Grant Enfinger take a car that's a 15th place car and make it finish 7th? Or is, 7th just where Grant Enfinger is in terms of his skill level? Like, is he like that 7th place driver in and week out? Oops, hold on. When we look at Enfinger's run at Las Vegas, sorry, I keep sneezing, so I keep pausing the recording. When we look at Enfinger's race at Phoenix, he starts 18th, drives up to 15th in 2 laps. We have a yellow. Some people pit. He ends up coming out 8th, restarting 9th, and he finishes lap 31, basically the end of the first stage, in 10th. And so Enfinger pits. He has an issue on lap 43 to 44. Does he get a flat tire? I doubt the... We're going to look it up. We're going to see what happened to Enfinger here. I'm an idiot. I go back to look at the race, what happened to Enfinger, and I'm looking at Zane Smith's lap by lap instead. Or at least up until lap 43. Basically, Enfinger is running 9th. Basically during a green flag run, finishes 7th at the end of the stage, and ends up running 6th. Basically any green flag run that we do get, because we do have 1, 2, 3, 4 yellows back to back to back to back. Enfinger basically runs 6th, and we have 2 more yellows, and Enfinger gets shuffled back a bit on restarts and finishes 7th at Las Vegas. And so going back to the question, did Enfinger wield a car that's a 14th to 7th? Or did he wheel a car that's a 20th place car to 7th? Like, we don't know yet. So Cody Rohball hops back in the same car that Enfinger just wheeled in 7th at Las Vegas, finishes 29th. Bristol Dirt, 27th. Richmond, 36th because he gets in a crash. Enfinger hops back in the car, runs 17th at Kansas, a very green race, and ends up finishing a lap down. Darlington, Enfinger, at least I hope Kansas was a clean race. Let me just look. Stage 1, 2. And we have a late race yellow. I forgot about that. We had 2 late race yellows at the end of Kansas, and that bumped Enfinger. Let me look. Sorry, this is kind of sporadic. Yeah, so Enfinger gets involved in a wreck on lap 128. He was running 15th and gets trapped a lap down, ends up finishing 17th there. Rohball hops back in the car, finishes 38th at Darlington. When he gets involved in a crash, Enfinger drives his car up to 4th at Austin, 14th at Charlotte. Enfinger has an engine issue late in the race at Pocono. At Knoxville, Cody Rollball gets involved in the crash. Watkins Glen, Enfinger blows a transmission when he was running pretty decent there. At Gateway, he has another mechanical issue and finishes 25th. He ends up going close to 12 laps down in this race. And then we get to Darlington, and Colby Howard drives this car. And Howard brought quite a bit of sponsorship, and I was curious where would Howard fall into this? Because I think Howard is very similar to Cody Rollball in the Xfinity Series. Now, is that the equipment that Howard is in, or is that just Howard? We've seen Howard run up front in the Xfinity Series very, very few times on short tracks, and then we kind of overreact thinking that, oh, Howard is good at short tracks in the Xfinity Series, we end up playing him. Doesn't work out. But at Darlington, I played Colby Howard because I was curious, is Howard better than Cody Rollball? Is he equivalent to Enfinger? Is it the equipment that's equivalent? Where is this car playing out? And so, if you remember, Howard gets spun out of 2, doesn't hit the wall, doesn't collect anyone else, but I was like, oh man, we're bad. He's going to be down on tires. But Howard drove through the field up until that point. When we look at how Howard was driving this car, so he starts 29th, drives up to 27th on lap 16. And then he's running 13th when he spins out on lap 27. And he's basically having to save tires until the end of the stage. Comes out of the stage at 17th, drives up to 14th, starts getting passed a little bit under the green flag pit stops, or under the green flag, my bad. And he's running in, I need to update this. And he's running in 16th, green flag pit stops happen. He cycles out to around 15th, runs in 13th up until the end of the race. And when we're looking at that, like, I didn't view Howard as a guy who was a top 15 driver. Even in the truck series, to where the competition is so weak, Howard finished in 13th is quite impressive. Obviously, we had people like Ryan Truex run into issue. We had people like, who else ran into problems here? We had Dylan Lupton run into issue. We had Jack Wood crash. We had Chris Wright run into issue. Haley Deegan run into an issue. So maybe we can bump it back and give Howard a 16th place finish. But still, 13th out of Howard at Darlington was unexpected for me. I did not project him to do that well. I had him for around 17th, 18th. And so maybe that comes from those guys wrecking, but it also comes from, does Cody Rollball, is he just that bad? Like, are these drivers that bad to where we've had 2 real race car drivers get into this, and they can wheel it to a top 15 finish, where Cody jumps in here and he can't even crack the top 30 in this car, barely the top 25 at times. And, you know, does it go back to where some of these drivers are just bad and we're grading the equipment wrong? Now, obviously, like, when we look at equipment, you have to look at the speed that these guys are running. Like, obviously, the Reum brothers are not on par with GMS. When you look at the lap times, they're severely lacking. But when we see somebody like this, to where, you know, Rollball was always faster than the back markers, but could just never crack into the fast cars, like, I think that's more Cody than what the car's doing. And that even kind of circles back to even the Cup Series with Ross Chastain and Kurt Busch. Like, maybe I gave Matt Kenseth too much slack. Maybe Matt Kenseth really was washed up. And obviously he was to an extent, but when we look back at the 42 car this year and how the 42 car is running, how Chip Ganassi is running, it's night and day. You know, and I do think that this is part of the parts freeze and how we haven't been able to develop anything, and Chip Ganassi's finally been able to catch up. And I made the joke in the Cup Series video about how this is just like basically a dog who's been sick the entire time. But it wasn't the dog's fault. It's because you're just giving him bad food. You know, you're giving him food with no nutrition. So then you're worried about, and you're asking, like, why is your dog, like, not performing? Why is he just lazy? Why is he sleeping? Why is he always sick? You know, as soon as you are even with the field and giving your dog actual food, you know, it's wow, he can actually show up and you know, bark and run around. The same thing with Chastain here with the parts freeze and them actually being able to look and, you know, work on the car. Like, even when we're looking back, maybe we were overreacting. 17th at Homestead. Okay, maybe Chastain was able to run all right. Okay, I'm going to play Chastain in Atlanta because it's similar to Homestead. Maybe we need to catch up. Maybe nobody's going to play him. Okay, 14th there. 15th at Richmond earlier in the year. 14th at Kansas. 15th Darlington. 15th Dover. 4th at Austin. Blew a motor at Charlotte. And so a lot of people, we kind of looked at, ever since they blew a motor at Charlotte, they've been faster. But what if they were just fast there? Hendrick probably gave him a bad motor at that time. But what if they were already onto something? It wasn't necessarily Hendrick blowing the motor at Charlotte to where they were just fast. And so, second at Nashville, obviously, a lot of these finishes are based off of him getting positions on restarts. And I think Pocono is an example of that. Pocono in the long run, he couldn't really do anything there. Came back to Atlanta, struggled, finished 21st. Loudon, 8th. Watkins Glen, 12th. Michigan, 35th. I forgot what happened in Michigan. I can't remember at the top of my head. But Darlington, 3rd. Richmond, 7th. Like, when we look back at the tracks, Larson was fast in the 42, and we look back and we look at the tracks that Chastain has finished well at. What if it really was Matt Kenseth? Like, obviously Larson was getting more out of this car than what he probably should have at the time. But what if Chip Ganassi was really putting together, a top 10 car this entire time, at least a top 15 car, and Kenseth was just that bad? And I'm not saying Chastain's the next greatest race car driver, but him being able to drive this equipment and to consistent top 15 finishes and top 10 finishes as of late at drastically different tracks. At road courses, he's a top 10 driver. At short tracks, he's a top 10 driver. At mile and a half, I would argue this car is a top 12 car. And is it the drivers that we're basing this off of? Is it the previous drivers? Like, that's why I started saying that, like, are the drivers that bad? When we look at, let's just kind of look at other cars. This year, we can kind of let me go ahead and look up, let's look at Kurt Busch too. Kurt Busch is having a bit of a resurgence this year, and let me get this up. And it wasn't like it was unexpected, but how Kurt Busch has been driving this year, like, sure, Kurt Busch is good for one win a year. That's kind of how he's been consistent over the last couple of years. Let me find his name over here. But even Kurt Busch, like, maybe it's not even Chip Ganassi, if we can get this to search. Come on now, Google, what are we doing? But anyway, now that we actually have the data pulled up, like, I think it is part of the parts freeze, but man, like, this is I'm basically recording this, asking myself, is Chip Ganassi the real deal? Is it the parts freeze that is helping him? Is it certain tracks that are helping him? Because even when we look back at the second part of the season with Kurt Busch in it, basically after Charlotte, which is, I kind of just said I didn't want to bring it all on them having engine issues at Charlotte. Because he ran 13th at Dover, ran 15th at Kansas, ran 13th at Richmond earlier in the year, 8th at Homestead. But yet again, Sonoma, 6th, Nashville, 8th, Pocono, 6th, second Pocono race, 20th. Road America, 4th. Atlanta won the race, had the fastest car at Atlanta. New Hampshire, 16th. McGlen, 13th. Indianapolis, that was a wreck fest. Can't really consider that. 4th at Michigan. Darlington, 6th. Like, I don't know the point I'm trying to make is these guys are performing better than we expect. They're typically cheaper than what we think. And maybe we do need to focus on just recent history with certain teams and talking about Chip Ganassi, Ross Chastain, Kurt Busch. And then other times we need to really look at the drive. That's the other one I was going to do. I was going to look at Bubba Wallace at Michigan right now. That's what we're going to look at. So we need to look at cars that maybe we haven't really considered, and when they're in the $8,000, $7,000, like, get them into lineups. Same thing with Eric Amarola this previous week. Obviously, he had, a speeding penalty or something late in the race, but Eric Amarola was performing stupid well at Richmond. Kobe Howard, Grant Enfinger in the 9 car. Like, these aren't cars that are, getting guys in these. These cars aren't like 30th place cars. I just think the drivers that have been in them for so long are finishing 30th. Kobe Robel. You know, and when we look at the 26th, when you get an actual driver in there who's going to perform well, John Nemechek, that's a fast car. I wanted to look at Bubba Wallace at Michigan. I actually haven't looked at this yet, and it's been quite a long time. I want to see, how did Bubba Wallace perform in this Hattori car? Because this ain't, sure, it's at least in this instance, Bubba Wallace is not going to hop into an MBM car. This is a Hattori car. And so when we look at Austin Hill and compare it to Bubba Wallace, let's just, I want to see how Bubba drove through the field. I'm pretty sure he drove through the field. I'm going to guess that he got wrecked when he was running around 13th. Don't remember, so let's go ahead and find, where are you at, Bubba Wallace? Where you at, Bubba? So Wallace starts 36th. Drives up to 23rd, 4 laps into the race. We have a yellow on lap 16. Comes out of that. Pretty sure they pit to change things. Starts 25th, drives up to 23rd. We have another yellow 2 laps later. And then we have a 4-lap dash to the end of the stage. Pretty sure Bubba Wallace pits on lap 23 to save tires or do something. He stays out under yellow because everybody goes into pit, and he is running 12 under yellow, 6, 6, 7. Maybe he did go into pit. Maybe he did go into the pits. Got speed or something. Anyway, so he restarts the stage on lap 36 and 33rd. We have a yellow right out of that, and this is lap 37. Who wrecked on lap 37? Let's take a gander at racing reference because I don't want to pull up the race right now. Let's see, lap 37. That is... We had a lot of yellows here. This is Bubba Wallace's wreck. That doesn't make any sense. When did this wreck happen? 36. They go green one time. Lap 37, they wreck. It's the 2, 11, 18, 22, 61. I'm pretty sure Bubba just got... Did he not brake correctly? Did he arc or brake the wreck? I don't remember right now. Alright, gotta go find the race. Hold on, give me a moment here. Okay, so this data is wrong from NASCAR, not Pierce, because... So I was right. Bubba Wallace pits on lap 23 when they have a yellow, takes tires, he stays out under the stage caution, restarts 6th. So he's battling for 6th right now. Bubba Wallace is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th. And Reddick gets loose in the center of 1 and 2. It makes Bubba Wallace kind of check up, and they get 3 wide out of turn 2. Cindric gets into the 2 car, and Wallace has absolutely nowhere to go. He gets hit by both the 22 and the 18 car, but doesn't sustain a ton of damage. Or I guess it's because he never crossed the line under green. It just considered him 33rd. Because I was like, Bubba Wallace was not in 33rd when this wreck happened. So when we look back at the rest of the race, they get it repaired. Wallace comes out of that wrecked car, 46th, or lap 46. He starts 27th, drives all the way up to 17th by lap 61. So from 46 to 61, he goes from 27th to 17th. We have a yellow. Wallace restarts lap 67, 13th. Drops a little bit because I'm pretty sure they're down a set of tires. No, he just pits. It's just that green flag pit stop on lap 92. And so he cycles from 14th to 16th. Then we start running into a lot of yellows. And Wallace, we just have yellow. I forgot how much of a wreckfest Michigan was. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 yellows at the end of this race. Back to back. We only have one. So from lap 117 to 139, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 laps of green flag racing. Bubba Wallace finishes 10th. Only 14 cars finished on the lead lap. Holy shit. What a wild race. Just can't live and die by this data. But when we compare that to how, let's say, Austin Hill runs this car, outside of the MBM guys, because obviously they're on the same equipment. And so whenever Austin Hill runs this car, finishes 9th at Nashville, 25th at Pocono. He had a steering box issue, finished 29th at Indianapolis, Michigan. Bubba Wallace's finishes 10th. Like, this is a car. Like, the 61 is equivalent to the 99 car. Whenever there's a driver in there that would not normally run a piece of shit equipment, play him. Especially because we're running this stupid, non-qualifying start. The qualifying is determined by the algorithm. I want to say, anytime you see a quality driver in the 99, in the 61, in a car that normally they're not in the car, or just a name that kind of sticks out, I'm not saying blindly play them, but I'm going to be playing them. I guess 61's kind of a different issue because it's both split between MBM and the Hattori gang. But, I think we need to get rid of a lot of preconceptions? Precognition? Can't think of the word right now, or the proper word to use right now. But, if there's a guy in a car that normally isn't in the car, I'm going to say take the risk to play him, especially if they have sponsors. That's really what I want to do. Is there any other situations of this kind of happening this year outside of, I guess Dominators busting is a kind of a quick topic I want to talk about. And I talked about it with Pierce earlier in the year when we were doing kind of our preseason discussions, and I wanted to talk about Dominators that were projected to kill the race that didn't show up. And so this previous race we had Justin Allgaier. Everything said to point him. They just arrived with the car that wasn't prepared, or that just didn't run as well. So it's not a bad play. John Nemechek at Gateway, wasn't a bad play. They just showed up with a car that wasn't there because they don't have any practice. They can't make any last second changes, and they can't confirm or change, what their setup is when they arrive. And so I don't have the data right now to support me. If anybody wants to look it up, feel free to. I just don't have the time right now to look at past ownership this year and look back at who was supposed to be a dominator that failed. But even when you look at the Cup Series, when you have the issues that Larson has had at certain races when he was a lock, quote unquote, when there's other guys who are supposed to be a lock, I think the failure rate is maybe 40% right now, 45% on the, and maybe that just, maybe I'm making it higher in my head, which is probably why I need to go back and that's going to be a fucking 2-hour deal. That's kind of why I've been avoiding it. So if anybody wants to go back and compare projections, like at a certain race, and then look at the ownership of that guy who is supposed to project well, and then the times that they haven't performed or failed, please do. But right down in my head, I think it's probably it's 40%, 45% of the projected dominator not performing. Even when you look back at Truex, this previous race at Richmond, nothing he did wrong. He just beat the leader to the line. But he was a projected dominator that should have ran well, that should have killed the race, and he technically didn't kill it. He got up there, led laps, but he wasn't the killer that we thought he would be. And maybe you need to put an asterisk by that. Like, that wasn't necessarily him not performing well. That was just a mistake. But when you look at how often that's happened the last 2 years with no practice and qualifying being based on algorithm, it's probably little less than a coin flip of the guy who everybody projects to do well not doing well, even if it's them messing the setup, even when it's them crashing or getting penalized. Cindric at Michigan got wrecked. Nothing he did wrong. He just got wrecked. But that's another situation to where the projected dominator maybe didn't perform well. And I know I kind of started this episode talking about, well, maybe it's the drivers who are just that bad. And I think the drivers are pretty bad across the board. But yeah, if there's a guy hopping into a car or a truck that normally isn't in the truck, I am probably going to project them to do better than they should. And if I can find anything showing that, that's what I'm going to do. And so Sam Hunt, 26 car. Anytime somebody's in that car that normally isn't in there, that's a good driver, I'm going to play him. R Motorsports. Anytime there's a guy in that car or that in those cars that should perform well, I'm going to play him. That's why I've been extremely high on Brett Moffitt this year. That's why I've been extremely high on Ty Dillon ever since he's been in that car. Why I've been high on Reddick, and why I've been concerned about guys who aren't necessarily good drivers in that equipment. Because I think a lot of the drivers are bad. Hopefully this kind of makes sense, but maybe I just rambled for half an hour. But I wanted to kind of record that and leave it out there. If you find anything else on your own, let me know. Or maybe use this to look into situations where, well, maybe why have cars perform better with certain drivers in them, and why have they performed so poorly with other drivers in them? Maybe that's the real question. I just think it's because a lot of these drivers are just bad. And maybe we just need to focus on, I don't know, takeaways here. Maybe equipment is not keeping drivers back. Maybe it's just some of the drivers are just that poorly. Play drivers who we know are good drivers and take the risk on equipment not working out. And don't judge good drivers hopping in bad equipment and expect them to do poorly. If anything, if it's a good driver hopping into equipment that's been performing poorly, there's a reason he's hopping in that equipment. Bubba Wallace, John Nemechek, can't think of other guys, or like the 99 car, how they've been splitting a lot of the Stuart Haas and now even Junior Motorsports cars. Like, I think we need to play these guys, and I think place differential is coming through more than it should just because of the algorithm, qualifying, determining where guys start. I think we're gonna end it there. I think I rambled on enough. Hopefully I didn't bore you, and maybe this helped you out, maybe it didn't. But yeah, thanks for listening.